Every day, billions of people willingly change their own brain chemistry without ever thinking about it that way. Coffee, a cigarette, a glass of wine, a pill, a powder, they all do the same basic thing, hijacking the chemical signals your brain uses to decide how you feel. Some just nudge things slightly. Others completely rewrite the experience of being conscious for a few hours. Here's what's actually happening inside your skull with the substances people reach for most, from the ones on your kitchen counter to the ones tied to far more serious consequences. Caffeine. Start with caffeine, since it's probably in your system right now. It's a stimulant that speeds up your brain and nervous system, found in coffee, tea, soda, and energy drinks. And for most people, it's less a drink than a ritual, the day not starting until that first sip lands. Once swallowed, it moves into your bloodstream and blocks a chemical called adenosine, the exact signal that tells your brain it's tired. Here's what most people miss. Caffeine doesn't create energy. It just hides your exhaustion. Neurons fire faster, your heart beats harder, and within 20 to 30 minutes, you hit the peak, sharper, more focused, the world feeling easier to manage. It's not euphoria, it's confidence poured into a mug. But as your body metabolizes it, that blocked adenosine floods back at once, and the crash follows, focus dissolving into irritability and jitters. Caffeine is mildly addictive, but it disguises itself as routine. Over time, your brain produces less natural alertness on its own, meaning you need more caffeine just to feel normal, and stop suddenly and you'll feel it fast: headaches, fatigue, brain fog. We joke about needing coffee to survive, but that joke is withdrawal wearing a costume. Nicotine. Nicotine works differently, but hooks just as effectively. It's the fast-acting stimulant in tobacco and vapes, the chemical actually responsible for addiction, not the smoke or vapor itself. Inhaled, it reaches the brain within seconds, triggering a rush of dopamine tied to calm, focus, and contentment. At first it feels close to perfect, heart rate ticking up slightly, thoughts clearing, stress melting away. But nicotine burns out fast. As dopamine fades, calm curdles into tension and craving, and that craving keeps people locked in the cycle, since each new hit only relieves the discomfort the last one created. Nicotine was never actually relaxing you. It was resetting withdrawal it caused in the first place. Over time, it reshapes how your brain releases dopamine at baseline, so without it, everything starts feeling flat and dull. Physically, it damages lungs, blood vessels, and the heart. But the mental trap, the conviction you can't cope without it, is often harder to break. Alcohol. Alcohol takes the opposite approach, a depressant that slows your brain and nervous system rather than speeding anything up. It shows up everywhere: celebrations, dinners, hard nights, people reaching for it to loosen up, forget, or feel like they belong. Once in the bloodstream, it disrupts communication between parts of the brain, and at first that feels good: warmth, relaxation, confidence, openness. As the peak hits, judgment fades further, emotions rise, coordination slips. But your brain still insists everything's fine. Exactly the illusion alcohol runs on, convincing you you're still in control while steadily proving otherwise. Eventually, the comedown arrives, fun tips into exhaustion, and hours later, you're dehydrated, nauseous, and foggy, with a full chemical crash waiting the next morning as the hangover. Alcohol's pull is quiet and familiar. The more regularly you drink, the more your brain expects it as its relaxation switch, until you're not drinking to enjoy yourself anymore, just to feel normal. Long term, it damages the liver, weakens the heart, and erodes self-control, offering a feeling of aliveness that slowly dulls everything that actually makes you feel human. Cannabis. Cannabis works through an entirely different system. It's a psychoactive drug from the marijuana plant, typically smoked, vaped, or eaten, with THC as its main active compound, interacting with your endocannabinoid system, the network responsible for mood, memory, and perception. THC binds to receptors that normally respond to your body's own calming molecules, and the onset slows your sense of time, sharpens senses, and makes everything feel slightly warmer, funnier, softer. At its peak, depending on dose and mindset, it can heighten creativity and calm, or tip into confusion and paranoia, colors feeling stronger, thoughts feeling profound. As the comedown sets in, thinking slows, tiredness creeps in, gentle for some, a heavy fog for others. Cannabis is mostly psychologically addictive rather than physically, but regular use can dull motivation, interfere with short-term memory, and in higher doses trigger real anxiety, quietly reshaping how your brain rewards relaxation over time. Cocaine. Cocaine is a far more aggressive stimulant, made from the coca leaf, usually snorted as a powder, though it can also be smoked or injected. Once absorbed, it floods the brain with dopamine while blocking your body's ability to reabsorb it, drowning your brain in pleasure signals almost instantly. The onset is a rush of euphoria, energy, and confidence, heart pounding, pupils widening, every thought feeling brilliant, a sensation of being untouchable. At the peak, you're fast and electric, but your brain's reward system is already burning through fuel it can't easily replace, so the high is intense and short-lived. Within minutes, dopamine crashes, and the comedown slams in hard, anxiety spiking, mood collapsing, leaving you craving more just to feel baseline normal again. Cocaine is highly addictive precisely because your brain quickly links it to pleasure and control, an illusion that rewires you to need the next hit almost immediately. Long-term use damages the heart, constricts blood vessels, and alters brain chemistry so deeply that ordinary joy without the drug can start to feel out of reach. MDMA, known as ecstasy or Molly, is a synthetic stimulant and mild hallucinogen, usually swallowed as a pill at parties or clubs. It floods the brain with serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin together, the trio behind happiness, reward, and connection. As it takes hold, warmth spreads through the body, music feels richer, touch feels electric, and you feel deeply connected to everyone around you, your brain running on maximum empathy. At its peak, serotonin spikes hard, and the world can feel close to perfect, hours passing like minutes. But MDMA burns through serotonin reserves so quickly that within hours the comedown begins, emotion draining out and replaced by emptiness or exhaustion. Frequent use damages the neurons responsible for releasing serotonin, making natural happiness harder to access afterward. And physically, it can overheat the body, cause severe dehydration, and in rare cases, organ failure. It earns the nickname love drug because it makes you feel bonded to everyone in the room. But once it wears off, that connection reveals itself as chemical rather than real. LSD sits in a different category, a hallucinogen that rewires how your brain processes reality itself. Typically taken as a tiny tab on the tongue in microscopic doses, it binds to serotonin receptors, particularly one called 5-HT2A, which helps shape perception and mood. As it takes effect, patterns begin moving, colors shift, sounds seem to glow, less like hallucinations appearing, and more like reality starting to breathe. At its peak, which can stretch for hours, time loses meaning, and your sense of self can dissolve, leaving you feeling connected to everything around you, euphoric, terrified, or both. The comedown is slow and gradual, more like returning from orbit, reality rebuilding piece by piece, while you're left calm, reflective, or drained. LSD isn't physically addictive, but it's deeply unpredictable, the same dose capable of producing bliss or nightmare depending on mindset and environment. And it can trigger flashbacks or anxiety long after the experience ends. Ketamine. Ketamine began as a surgical anesthetic and is now used medically in small doses for treatment-resistant depression. Though, recreationally, people chase its dissociative effects, typically snorted or injected. It works by blocking glutamate, a chemical messenger the brain relies on for sensory input and awareness. Within minutes, the world starts feeling distant and dreamlike, and at its peak, perception can detach completely, users describing floating above their own body or watching their life from a distance. What's called the K-hole, peaceful for some and terrifying for others. As the comedown begins, awareness slowly returns, vision clears, though the world stays foggy a while longer, leaving a strange underwater calm behind. Ketamine isn't classically addictive, but builds tolerance fast, and heavy use is linked to memory problems, bladder damage, and emotional numbness, separating body from mind in a way that doesn't always fully reconnect afterward. Opioids. Opioids, whether pharmaceutical morphine and oxycodone or street heroin and fentanyl, work through the same mechanism regardless of how they're taken. They attach to opioid receptors throughout the brain and body, blocking pain while flooding the system with euphoria. The onset brings warmth and relief, a heavy calm that feels like total safety, pain fading, stress disappearing. At the peak, breathing slows, heart rate drops, thoughts drift, a bliss that sits dangerously close to unconsciousness, and users often chase that exact feeling even as each attempt delivers a weaker version of it. The comedown is brutal. Anxiety, muscle pain, nausea, insomnia, every nerve screaming for more, and that withdrawal doesn't just create desire. It makes ordinary life feel unbearable without the drug. Opioids rank among the most addictive substances that exist, rewiring the brain's survival instincts to treat the drug as essential as oxygen, and over time, they devastate tolerance, organs, and relationships alike. Methamphetamine. Methamphetamine pushes stimulation to its extreme, flooding the brain with dopamine and adrenaline simultaneously and hitting within seconds regardless of route. Energy explodes almost immediately, heart racing, mind sharpening, every sense turned up to maximum, sleep suddenly feeling optional. At its peak, confidence tips into euphoria and motivation becomes obsession, though what's really happening is the brain burning through its entire dopamine supply in one uncontrolled surge. The comedown that follows is harsh, energy vanishing entirely, replaced by exhaustion, depression, and paranoia, a chemical hangover that can stretch across days. Meth is extremely addictive, each high teaching the brain to crave the next one while destroying its natural capacity to create pleasure on its own. And long-term use brings severe weight loss, insomnia, hallucinations, and memory loss. Psilocybin. Psilocybin, the compound in magic mushrooms, is eaten raw, brewed into tea, or taken in capsule form, converting inside the body into psilocin, which interacts with serotonin receptors, much like LSD does. Within about half an hour, senses sharpen, patterns start to shimmer, and reality takes on a rippling quality. At its peak, perception transforms fully. Colors pulsing, time stretching, often accompanied by a strong sense of connection to nature or emotion, an experience some describe as enlightening, and others as overwhelming, shaped entirely by what you bring into it. As things settle, thoughts rebuild gradually, often leaving peace or gratitude behind, though, for some, it can trigger lingering confusion or anxiety. Psilocybin isn't physically addictive, but it's genuinely powerful, capable of helping some people break old mental patterns while triggering panic or psychosis in others under the wrong conditions. Benzodiazepines. Finally, benzodiazepines, commonly prescribed for anxiety, panic attacks, and insomnia, work by enhancing GABA, a brain chemical responsible for slowing activity and producing calm. After swallowing one, relief sets in quickly, muscles loosening, thoughts quieting, heart rate slowing as stress drifts away. At the peak, everything feels distant and soft, worry fading, sleep coming easily. But as the comedown starts, drowsiness shifts into confusion and memory begins slipping. With regular use, the brain essentially forgets how to produce calm on its own, and benzodiazepines are highly addictive when used beyond what's prescribed, tolerance building quickly and demanding higher doses for the same relief. Stopping suddenly can trigger severe anxiety, tremors, or even seizures, a withdrawal serious enough to require medical supervision. They quiet the mind effectively, but that silence itself can become the thing you're addicted to.